In a landmark decision, the United States High Court has struck down the Trump-era tariffs, redrawing the map of global commerce. For years, these tariffs fueled economic friction and reshaped supply chains, impacting prices for millions. The court's ruling closes a contentious chapter in U.S. economic policy and opens a new era of uncertainty and opportunity. This marks a decisive shift away from nearly a decade of protectionist trade policy. The tariffs, once justified as protecting American industries, became central to the America First agenda. Their removal forces a global economic reset, challenging nations to adapt to a landscape without these barriers. The decision is a direct check on executive power, clarifying that national security cannot be used as a blank check for sweeping economic measures. The legal battle questioned whether a president could impose such broad tariffs without ongoing congressional approval. The court's answer, no. As markets surge and currencies fluctuate, the world is left to grapple with the long-term consequences. This ruling is not an end, but a beginning, a new era of global economic diplomacy. The world is watching. To grasp the High Court's decision, we must revisit the Trump-era tariffs. These were sweeping, aggressive taxes on imports, targeting China and even U.S. allies. Section 301 tariffs hit hundreds of billions in Chinese goods, while Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum were justified as national security measures. The scope was unprecedented, disrupting decades of U.S. free trade policy. Implementation was chaotic. Businesses scrambled as tariffs were announced with little warning, creating uncertainty and stifling investment. The strategy: make foreign goods pricier, boost domestic industry, and reduce the trade deficit. But the costs were passed to American consumers, and U.S. exporters faced retaliation, especially in agriculture. The tariffs were meant to force concessions and reshore industries, but the reality proved far more complicated. Companies faced unpredictable policy shifts, undermining long-term planning. The trade war had begun, with global consequences. The economic fallout set the stage for the legal and political battles that followed. Now, the era of broad tariffs is over. The Trump tariffs faced a barrage of lawsuits from American businesses, arguing the executive branch had overstepped its authority. The core issue: only Congress can levy taxes and regulate foreign commerce, not the president alone. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act allowed tariffs for national security, but its use was stretched far beyond its intent. Lower courts were split, creating legal chaos and uncertainty for businesses. The High Court ruled that while Section 232 is constitutional, its open-ended application was not. Executive power must have clear limits. The decision reigned in unilateral economic action, restoring balance between Congress and the presidency. The data is clear. Tariffs disrupted the U.S. economy and global trade. Studies showed American importers and consumers bore nearly all the costs, with billions lost monthly. Retaliatory tariffs from China and others devastated U.S. agricultural exports, especially soybeans and pork. Federal aid offered only temporary relief. Lost markets were hard to reclaim. Domestic steel and aluminum saw short-term gains, but downstream industries like autos and appliances faced higher costs and inflation. Manufacturing jobs saw little net benefit. With tariffs gone, economists project a significant drop in consumer price inflation and relief for manufacturers. Steel and aluminum prices are already falling, signaling a boost for U.S. industry. The tariffs acted as a tax on the economy. Their removal is a much-needed tax cut. The scars remain, but the healing has begun. The numbers tell the story: tariffs hurt more than they helped. The High Court's decision triggered an immediate surge in global markets. Stock indices soared, led by multinationals and retailers expecting lower costs and higher profits. Companies like Apple and Nike saw shares jump as supply chain pressures eased. The US dollar weakened, while the yuan and euro strengthened, reflecting shifting trade expectations. Central banks are watching closely as these changes ripple through economies. Industrial metals like steel and aluminum dropped in price, while agricultural commodities rallied on hopes of renewed exports. Investors see the ruling as a de-risking event, ending years of trade war uncertainty. The return to a rules-based system boosts confidence and encourages long-term investment. For years, markets priced in geopolitical risk. Now, optimism is back. The decision is more than numbers, it's a signal of stability. Businesses are ready to invest again. The global economy is breathing easier. The era of trade war volatility is over, at least for now. International reaction has been swift and largely positive. The EU hailed the decision as a win for rules-based trade and transatlantic relations, eager to rebuild economic ties. China welcomed the move, but signaled it would keep some retaliatory tariffs as leverage in future talks. Canada and Mexico expressed relief, seeing the ruling as a vindication and a boost for North American supply chains. Business groups across borders celebrated the return to stability. Developing nations and the WTO see this as a chance to restore multilateral trade rules. The world is ready to move beyond trade wars, but new consensus will require careful diplomacy. The path forward is open, but the appetite for cooperation is clear. The global community is watching for the next steps. The end of tariffs creates clear winners and losers. In the U.S., consumers benefit first, with lower prices on everyday goods. Retailers and manufacturers relying on imports see costs fall and competitiveness rise. The tech sector, dependent on global supply chains, stands to gain from reduced expenses and renewed innovation. But domestic steel and aluminum producers now face tough competition from cheaper imports. Labor unions warn of job losses and plant closures in these sectors. The political divide deepens. Protectionists see the ruling as a blow to American workers, while free traders celebrate. The debate over U.S. trade policy is reignited, with the next election cycle sure to focus on these issues. The landscape has shifted, but the battle over America's economic future continues. Winners and losers alike must now adapt. The High Court's decision will reshape global trade for years. Companies, having diversified supply chains during the tariff era, are unlikely to fully reverse course. Regional trading blocs, like USMCA in North America and RCEP in Asia, are gaining strength. The scars of the trade war accelerate the trend toward regionalization and friendshoring. The ruling also revives the role of international institutions like the WTO, encouraging a return to multilateralism. The U.S. now has a chance to lead reforms on digital trade, subsidies, and environmental standards. National security concerns remain, especially in critical sectors like semiconductors and rare earths. Future policy will likely favor targeted measures, subsidies, export controls, and investment screening over broad tariffs. The approach to economic statecraft is becoming more nuanced and strategic. The world is moving toward a more complex, interconnected trade system. The next phase will test the adaptability of businesses and governments alike. The global order is being rewritten. The High Court's reversal of the Trump tariffs is a turning point for the global economy. We've seen the origins, the fallout, and the legal battle that brought them down. The ruling reigns in executive power and signals a return to predictable, rules-based trade. Relief is widespread, but challenges remain for U.S. industries once protected by tariffs. The end of this trade war doesn't end trade tensions. Core issues like China's practices and tech competition persist. The world must now find smarter, more collaborative solutions. The old playbook is gone. The next chapter is unwritten. The question remains, what will the world choose to write next?